Welcome in. It's another edition of the Brave Central podcast. Barrett Salee and Chris Domino with you, covering all things Atlanta Braves. It was a phenomenal week of baseball. Braves taking 2 of 3 from the Mets. They take the season series from the Mets for the 8th straight year. Chris, it is so much fun beating those guys, especially when you hear the Boo Birds in Citi Field, and especially when you do it in comeback fashion like we saw last night.
I also think, once again, after reading 2 days ago, David Peterson was the right guy on the mound to push the winning streak to 2 after a 7-game losing streak. Well, it's Senga versus Bryce Elder, advantage Mets. And those are the things that you go, when you lose 11 out of 12, you're not, or you shouldn't be counting anything. There's no givens at that point. You can tell me you're this and you're that, but when you're on a 7-game losing streak, 1-11 in 12 games, and you start to feel froggy where you go, my pitching matchup works. Oh, wait, that didn't work, but my pitching matchup really works tonight. Well, it didn't work out that way because Bryce Elder was every bit as good as anything that the Mets were going to throw out there last night.
Yeah, it's fun to see Bryce Elder when he's on. I know folks have sort of an opinion on him one way or the other now, and it's probably not going to change. The Braves can't keep him as pre-R, but it's so much fun to watch him when he's on. Now, I know those times have been few and far between, really since his All-Star year a couple of years ago. But last night, watching him work that strike zone, work that sinker, it's a thing of beauty. And I wish we could see that guy more often. And so moving forward for him, providing organizational depth, maybe using him as a trade piece if they need to, I think he still has value with this team in some way, shape, or form moving forward. And certainly if he continues to do what he did last night, the rest of the season, it's a pretty effective starting pitcher at the major league level this year for this team, considering everything that's gone on. So I don't really have a huge problem with Bryce Elder. I do have a problem, and it's not his fault, with what the Braves are asking him to do because he's not supposed to be in this situation. Ozzie Albies, he's hot. He's a streaky hitter anyway, right? He'll go 3 weeks. He couldn't hit water if he fell off a boat. Then he'll go 2 weeks where the ball looks like a beach ball. And it seems like we're in the latter part of that right now. And so for him to click at the same time that Michael Harris II's been clicking, it's fun. It makes for a brand of baseball that I think fans will be entertained by moving forward. And certainly, something that we can look at for the future if Ozzie can keep this up. And obviously Michael Harris continues to be Babe Ruth.
When it comes to Ozzie, I've always thought that, again, he has been my favorite player to watch on this team for a number of years because I just thought that he was sort of the guy in the middle of when things were going well. Oh, there he is. He made a play at second. Oh, there. And by the way, he doesn't have a big arm. His range is good, but he's not phenomenal. This is not a guy who everybody has said, he does it better than anybody in baseball. But there's something about his personality. There's something about his engagement. There's something about when he is going well, I think this team sort of feeds on it. I'm not a big energy guy until I see it in front of me. And he's been the guy over the years, 5 years or so, he's been the most energetic guy. And that doesn't mean pat him on the head. Oh, thank you. I'm not trying to treat him like he's a hack. But I just thought from an energy point of view, he seems to be the one in the middle of things more often than not. And when he's not going well, I think a general malaise really has taken over this team at times. And we can look, and it sort of coincides with him not being a very good offensive player.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. Being around those guys, he keeps everything light, and I think that there's a lot to be said for that. Sounds like Ronald Acuña Jr. will be back. I think if you're going to watch Ronald, I think to me, I would love to see him not necessarily being right every game. We're doing this DH thing with Sean and Drake. If we're going to do that instead of DHing Sean, let's just DH Ronald, because Sean, this year, I'm starting to sour a little bit on what he can provide if we do this alternating thing next year. I know Marcel's on a heater, so we don't have to worry about that right now. But I want as many ABs as possible for Ronald, but I also want to protect him a little bit too, especially in games where it might get a little cold, a little rainy, a little wet out there. Let's just take it easy with him in the field. But I can't wait to watch what he can do, at bat with this crew, the way they're swinging. This offense should be pretty fun.
Yeah, I keep looking at September 1st as a day if we can actually get back with a little bit of normalcy. And I fear a little bit of the run it back if you have a good September. Well, okay, we're fixed. Because I think your depth is a problem. I think something in the rotation has got to be fixed. I know the bullpen, and Iglesias is probably going to get an opportunity as many times as they're in one-run games to be the guy who could save those games. So I just want to see this team play maybe a healthy month of baseball down the stretch. And I'm not big on spoiling, but I do know it exists. How do I know? Because Cincinnati's playing Milwaukee. Mets have to keep an eye on that. While the Yankees are playing the Mariners, they got to keep an eye on what the Braves are doing to the Guardians because they're only a half game back of the Yankees now. So it does I wish we were in the middle of it. I wish we were the ones that were, if it was a tight race, who's playing there? Oh, gosh, they're at home. Wait, they have them next week. That's really good. But I didn't mind looking this morning to see how this affects Cleveland. Well, the Yankees go to Seattle. What about the Mets as we leave them after the last two games? Well, they've got Cincinnati playing Milwaukee at home in Cincinnati, the hottest team in baseball, going against the team that's closest behind them. So I wish I was involved in a little bit more scoreboard watching in that sense as a fan who was in the middle of it. But I am interested to see what happens with the two New York teams. I'm interested to see what the Brewers do. I'm interested to see how the Brewers affect what happens with the New York Mets and what we can do maybe either for or to Cleveland over the next 3 days. I'll also mention this. Stephen Vogt, I don't know who's going to win the Managers of the Year in baseball, but I do think that if the Guardians get in, Stephen Vogt is going to be one of those guys. And it's interesting because I was reading an article the other day. I called somebody that I know. I said, hey, what do you like? Give me something that's being said about him nationally. And he fits the resume. He's sort of out of casting. Catcher, sort of a grinder guy who understands baseball, X's and O's, but he also understands players' plight. And I find it interesting that I think the guy in their clubhouse who is their guy, as Jose Ramirez is their best player, they got a backup catcher who everybody says is the extension of Vogt, which means that he's got a guy in a clubhouse where he's decided he doesn't want to be in it, in my opinion, all the best managers do. That's your room. I just want to make sure it's policed the right way. And I think, again, when you have a backup catcher who can be a guy that can walk through and be an extension of your manager, that's not a bad thing.
Well, and Vogt's done that before. I mean, in 2021, he was what was his nickname in the club? The coach or something? He had a whistle or something that was somewhat of a motivating factor in 21. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy, and I like it that you have guys who retire as players and almost immediately go into high-profile roles on coaching staffs. I think that says a lot about who they were as players and why a guy like Vogt and other players around Major League Baseball that have had similar paths, why they are so important.
Yeah, you know them when you see them. I mean, there are handfuls of guys that you look at if you're around long enough and you go, him, yeah, probably. Him, I don't know, really sure. Yeah. And it's catchers. Everybody knows that's the position where you know the most. You're in the pitcher's room. You're in the hitter's rooms. You've got your fingers on everything. So that certainly gives you an advantage. But you know what I've always said, my catcher should be the toughest guy in the room. My catcher should be the guy that's out of the dugout. Now, he might not be fast enough to get there first, but his mentality is if there's a problem, I want my catcher on the field before anybody. It's why whether guys want to fight or not, you can see it in a catcher's eye. If he wants to stop a guy from going to the mound, do I half-ass stop him or do I let him know this is a bad idea from you? And I think that's what a catcher's personality is. It doesn't have to be loud. I just think it has to be affirmative. I just think it has to be, there's got to be a stoicism to those guys at times. And I think Vogt probably fills that role.
Hurston Waldrep tonight against the Guardians. Of all the pitchers that I think are, I wouldn't say stopgaps, but not supposed to be in this rotation, Hurston Waldrep's the one that I'm most excited about because he's got the hype. He's been talked about for a couple years now, and he's had success. But now he goes into a very different spot. Bristol was odd. Home game last time. Now he's going into a pit at the place formerly called the Jake. I can't still call it Progressive Field. It's still Jacobs Field in my mind. And those fans are going to be hopping in what's a huge series. So, we've seen him in a unique setting. We've seen Hurston Waldrep at home. Now, this is another good test case for him. And look, after listening to him and hearing the way he sort of handles himself now, it does feel like he's a little bit more mature. And I think maybe last year and the struggles he had in those two games sort of clicked a light bulb on in his head, and maybe he's a little bit more even keeled and ready to take on this different stage.
Yeah, I don't know why I feel this way. We did this thing the other day on the air. if I was protecting somebody, he's the guy that I'm saying you can't have him. And I don't believe anybody's untouchable. I believe you listen to every phone call, and if you can make a deal to get better, you make a deal to get better. But if I'm personally picking a guy, I think I'm picking Waldrep as the guy that over the next couple of years, he works his way up. If Chris Sale goes away in 2, move him up. Somebody gets traded, this guy's going to be the guy to me that elevates. I'm not telling you he's an ace in 2 years, but I am telling you that I think he's a bona fide 3 with a chance to move up. And I think that, again, if he's healthy, he'd be the guy that I'd sort of say, as much as anybody I've seen around here in a while. And I don't get enamored. You've heard me. I don't get enamored. I enjoy watching young guys pitch and have success. But I don't say, oh, well, here they are. They've arrived. Or here's what they're going to do the next 3 times out. I don't even want to jump on what they're going to do the next time out because it's all still a learning curve for this, for a guy his age and lack of experience. But I thought last year, this will crush a guy. He just found out he can't pitch in the majors. Bullshit. Then if a guy is going to sulk or pout or go down to AAA, and I'll give you 24 to 48 hours, but then you got to get back to work because there's a really good chance where they drafted you in the first place, but there's a chance because of injuries and because guys are going to flop out and fail, you're going to get multiple opportunities now if you've been picked where he was picked. Now it's time to do something. In my opinion, over the next couple of years, and it's health-driven, but in the next couple of years, I think if we're doing this in 2027 and getting ready for 2028, I think this guy's the top of the line of the rotation. I think he's one of those guys who sits in at 1, 2, 3 at a minimum. He's a 3. I think he steps up to be better than that.
Yeah, I think there's a case to be made for that. What I do think is very cool about this story is that, he came up, he failed last year, and then he saw pitcher after pitcher after pitcher jump him to get to Atlanta while he was down at Gwinnett, and he didn't pitch well at Gwinnett, so maybe he didn't deserve it. But this is a highly touted guy who he knows that the organization loves him. The organization loves him, and yet he's seeing all these dudes just pass him on the highway going from Gwinnett to Atlanta, and yet he still comes up here and does a great job in two games so far. So it's going to be fun to see him tonight in Cleveland against those Guardians. Of course, we'll have everything covered on the Braves Radio Network Ford Leadoff Show at 5:55, and then of course Hyundai postgame show across the network right after the game, so we can keep you up to date on what happens this evening.
There's one other thing to keep an ear out for. If you're watching the game on TV and you just hear a random bunch of noise, remember those fans are scoreboard watching with the Yankees. Mm-hmm. So at the end, because I think the Yankees might be are they in Seattle? They might be in Seattle. So the timing of it might not work. But if there's something that happens while this game is going on and that game gets started and the Yankees get down 3-1, or at some point this weekend, if you hear a random roar from that crowd, it might be Yankee scoreboard driven because this team could find itself, the Cleveland version, they could find themselves in first place tonight. So,
the Yankees are at St. Louis, actually.
Oh, okay. So there you go. Yeah. So keep an eye on when the scoreboard. If you just hear a random, whoa, whatever, that could mean that they've actually seen St. Louis 3-0. And that could be one of those moments where you go, what is my pitcher going to do if that building gets fired up? And that is something, because I guess we're playing in the similar time zones at that point where you just go there. There could be a little bit of scoreboard noise. And let's see what the reaction might be from one of our guys, especially if it's Waldrep on the mound.
Could be a lot of fun. Going to be a fun series up there in Cleveland. He's Chris Domino. I'm Barrett Salee. This is the Brave Central podcast. Don't forget to like, share, review, all of that fun stuff. If you are listening or watching this, you know how to do the podcast game. So make sure you bump this one up in the algorithm so everybody gets to see it. And we will talk to you on Monday.